Good morning, everyone. See everyone starting to arrive. Good morning and welcome. For some of you, I think it might be afternoon, so good afternoon for all of you joining us from outside of British Columbia. We're just going to take a few minutes and wait while everyone joins us. Feel free to post in the chat where you're calling in from today and where you're joining us from. Okay, well, let's just get going. Welcome to today's webinar, Leading on Purpose, how social purpose leaders can bring a company's social purpose to life. Before we get started, I'd like to acknowledge that we are all visitors on this land that we are on today, the ancestral and unceded territory of the First Nations people that call this land their home. And in particular, gratitude to the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh people that are Indigenous to the Pacific Northwest Coast, and to the nations and the various territories that we're all joining from today. So my name is Tessa Vanderkop, and I'm the social purpose strategist with the United Way BC Social Purpose Institute. The United Way BC's mission is to help create healthy, caring, and inclusive communities, and engaging business and bringing all their unique assets to help build resilient communities is one strategy that United Way BC uses to achieve this. The Social Purpose Institute was created by United Way BC in order to help businesses pivot to the purpose business model, thereby supporting both business transition and building stronger, more resilient communities. The Social Purpose Institute works with businesses to help them define and implement their social purpose through peer-to-peer facilitated programs, professional services, and webinars such as these. We're very grateful to have Coast Capital as our presenting sponsor for this event. They have gone through both of our programs, and in 2022, were rated platinum in the first ever Corporate Knights Social Purpose Transition Pathways ranking of social purpose businesses in Canada. In 2022, they were also recognized as Best for Their World B Corp for exceptional impact in the area of governance. I'd like to thank Coast Capital for their incredible support for the Social Purpose Institute, their commitment to social purpose, and for the support of this event. And I'd like to now introduce you to Tara Walter, Coast Capital's Management Social Purpose Ecosystem, to say a few words.
Thank you, Tessa. Can you see me okay?
Yes, I can see you.
Excellent, thank you. Good morning, everyone. I would like to begin by acknowledging with respect the traditional ancestral territory of the Coast Salish peoples, including the traditional territories of the Kwakwitlam, the Stolo, the Tsleil-Waututh, and the Kikite, on whose land I'm dialing in from today. I'm grateful to have the opportunity to live on these lands as an uninvited guest. As a federal financial cooperative and a certified B Corp and a social purpose organization with our head office in one of the country's fastest growing cities, Surrey, we see firsthand the opportunities and the growing challenges facing people and businesses in Canada. Across the country, people are coping with difficult financial realities, and we all feel it. They're working harder to save enough for a home, have little if any cash left over at the end of the month, and are struggling to grow their careers or start their own businesses. These are all things that should be within reach, but for many people in Canada, this just isn't their reality. That is what drove us at Coast Capital to embark on the journey of making a tangible, lasting impact by becoming a social purpose company in 2020 and defining our social purpose of building better futures together by unlocking financial opportunities that positively impact people and communities. To achieve our purpose, we're harnessing all our enterprise capabilities and resources, from products and services, talents, influence, and reach to advance our 4 goals. So our first goal is to build and champion more equitable and inclusive employment. We believe a better future for people in Canada requires reliable living wage employment. As such, we're inspiring to build the best, most inclusive workplace for our employees and working with partners to create opportunities for others to thrive in their careers. Second, we're supporting people and businesses in Canada with more equitable access to education and training. Many people in Canada can't access or afford the training and education they need to advance their careers and stability. We want to change this by supporting people to access the education and skills training they need to prepare them for the jobs of the future. And third, we're working hard to build an inclusive, equitable, and accessible financial system. Well, some people have access to the financial tools and support they need to build strong futures for themselves and their families. Many do not. We want to help our members and the wider community by connecting them with comprehensive and relevant financial education and trusted advice by driving inclusion through our products and services. And last, supporting the growth of the purpose economy in Canada. This last goal is why we're all here today in partnership with the United Way BC Social Purpose Institute to support the growth of the purpose economy in Canada. I'm grateful to all of you for sharing your time with us this morning and to everyone at the Social Purpose Institute that are helping grow the purpose economy. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Tara. A social purpose business is a business whose enduring reason for being is to create a better world. Today's event is about leading on purpose. And what does that look like? And how can business leaders bring a company's social purpose to life? Why social purpose? Why now? We'll have the opportunity to hear from 3 business leaders at how they have approached social purpose in the work they do, and learn from them why it's beneficial for businesses to adopt and embed social purpose. The goal of this event is to inspire businesses that have not yet made the pivot to purpose with insights and actionable steps to help them act. We'll have some time at the end of the webinar to take some questions, so please feel free to pop them in the chat. If we can't get to them all of us here are always very happy to follow up after the event to continue the conversation. And without further ado, I'd like to introduce today's panelists. Liz McBeth is a second-generation leader in her family business, Amour Valve, and founding member of the Family Enterprise Canada's Family Business for Sustainable Development Initiative. Amour Valve's purpose journey began when Liz attended a Chandos and Conspiracy of Love event in 2018 and gained real momentum when she learned about the United Way Social Purpose Institute. Having completed the Social Purpose Innovators program and started Implementers, Liz is overseeing Amour Valve's pivot to purpose, transforming infrastructure for a healthy, thriving planet. As the business focuses on providing clients with resilient, top quality solutions while modeling sustainable and equitable business practices. Liz looks forward to sharing her experiences and to helping other businesses discover their purpose so that they can amplify the good that they are already doing through their work. It's a pleasure to have Liz here today. We've gotten to know Liz and her team quite well over the past year and a half as they have been working through their social purpose pivot. Liz, do you want to turn your camera on and say hello?
Hello.
Great, thank you. Our next panelist is Nicole Monaco, Head of Brand and Communications for Chandos Construction. Nicole is a values-driven executive leader and critical thinker. In her 17 years of B2B experience across industries, Nicole has led marketing, communications, and sales teams in publicly traded, private, and employee-owned companies. She's known for driving change and taking creative risks. Nicole is currently the head of brand and communications for Chandos Construction, Canada's only B Corp certified technical builder. In her role at Chandos, Nicole leads the team responsible for brand, marketing, employee communications, and external communications. She also leads social impact and purpose initiatives for the company. Nicole is a member of the board of directors of the CGLCC, Canada's 2S LGBTQI Chamber of Commerce, and is currently pursuing a graduate diploma in social responsibility and sustainability at the University of Toronto. Nicole's breadth and depth of experience allows her to approach problems from different angles and identify opportunities for organizations to differentiate and grow. She's originally from Toronto, but has called Edmonton home since 2013, where she lives with her partner and dog. And we've had the pleasure of having Nicole come and speak to our cohort this year, which I think was like an amazing experience for all of us. And Nicole? Hi, Nicole.
Hi. Good morning, good afternoon.
And Michelle Reid. Michelle supports the growth and nurturing of the B Corp movement in her role as advisor, corporate sustainability, and B Corp. She's responsible for BDC's partnership with B Lab US and Canada, as well as for B Corp outreach, education, and community building. Michelle has over 12 years of rich, varied experience in the sustainability field. And over the past 4 years, she has supported the growth of Canada's B Corp movement by guiding and coaching entrepreneurs to the B Pact assessment, managing a B Corp cohort program for entrepreneurs, and supporting the growth of regional B Corp networks across Canada, notably in her home of Vancouver, where she serves as chair of its B Local. She manages BDC's partnerships with B Lab US and Canada to help BDC provide resources, guidance, and collective action opportunities to strengthen the Canadian entrepreneurs' sustainability practices. So welcome everyone today. So lovely to have you all here. And thank you so much for taking time out of your schedules to join us for this important conversation on social purpose. So you're all coming from different perspectives, different organizations, and different backgrounds. I'd really love to hear, I think, from you, what does social purpose mean to you, and why do you think it is important for business? And we'll start it off with Liz.
Okay, well, thank you for including me in this panel of practitioners with a lot more experience in this space than I have. Hopefully my experience will be relatable to those in the audience. And I think fundamentally, the reason that businesses exist is not to make a profit. I think it's to solve a need or address a need. And it needs to be a need that's desired by society. So let's call it a social need. And when you take the time to adopt a social purpose, to kind of discover fundamentally what it is that you are there to solve for society, it helps you not lose sight of that fact, because it's easy to lose sight of it, but really profit is what you earn for solving a need. And in our case, Amour Val, we exist to transform infrastructure for a healthy, thriving planet as our purpose. We're part of the value chain for energy production, for industry, and our business addresses the needs of those customers for good quality product, valves, piping, and instrumentation, so that they can in turn make products that improve our health and quality of life. Things like, keeping the lights on, keeping the heating on, very important for us in Canada. I think what society is asking of our customers more and more now is they want that quality of life and reliable access to water and heat and electricity, et cetera. But they want those businesses to operate in a more sustainable and equitable way. And so we believe that by helping our customers make their infrastructure more resilient and people and planet friendly, that will lead to prosperity for all of us. And as a business, we also see that access to talent, to capital, and to markets is going to be increasingly determined by how authentically and well we articulate our why we exist. And I do believe that mandatory GHG disclosures are around the corner. So as the second generation owner in our family business, I've got to make sure that we're ready for changes that are coming. And I'd rather prepare in advance than scramble at the end. So that's in part why I joined the Family Enterprise Canada Sustainability Initiative, because for a family business, that next generation is really important for business continuity. And I want the next generation in my family to take an interest and pride in what we do. And I think that having a purpose and practicing and modeling sustainability and equity is going to be a big part of that.
Thanks, Liz. And Nicole, from your perspective?
Yeah, thanks, Tessa. And I just also wanted to say thanks to Coast Capital and yourself for organizing this great event, and to my fellow panelists, really excited to be speaking about this topic. So, I mean, you know, I think one of the things that's so important to think about is that a business is really nested within society and within the environment. And if we start to think of it in that lens, ultimately, business is subservient to society and the environment, and really the society and the environment are, you know, our number one stakeholder as a business. And so I think that's really the why here for me, is really kind of reversing that thought that, you know, business is ultimately about making profits, as Liz, you know, talked about, and it's really about making choices that are going to be best for the world. Some of the ways that I think about purpose at work and is really thinking about measurable change. So how can a business deliver measurable change from its actions, its policies, and its revenue generation model to improve society, whether that's the environment or social circumstances? In other words, it's really important to look at what a business does, how it makes money, compare that to what the world needs in terms of environmental and social outcomes, and then really looking at that overlap and identifying those areas where the business can move the needle and improve environmental and social outcomes. And that's sort of what it means to me to be a social purpose business. And I think it's really important to you know, to look at purpose and why it's important for business as a bit of an umbrella. So it's more than just community investment. It's more than just reducing greenhouse gases. It's more than just supplier diversity and building an inclusive culture. It really brings that all together. So a purpose can really help tie all of those key initiatives together under one vision and strategy. And it allows you to bring that purpose lens to every decision you make in your operations. Ultimately, integrating your purpose to make an impact through your business is I think the most purest form of purpose at work. So how can you use your supply chain, your recruitment, your service delivery to be executing and living that purpose every day? I think that's the ultimate in which we can see purpose, performance, and profits really tied together.
Thanks, Nicole. Michelle, I'd love to hear from your perspective.
Yeah, thanks, Tessa. I have always felt that there's something bigger than me in the world, really, and from a really young age, I knew I always wanted to be in service. And social purpose to me is really being interconnected with your surrounding environment, and really this deep responsibility to ensuring everything within your sphere of influence has a chance to thrive. And so the reality when we look at our current state is we can't rely on governments and not-for-profits to solve some of today's biggest social and environmental issues. You know, they don't have the bandwidth, they don't have the resources and the knowledge really to do so. But I think businesses have such a great power to just really make these changes in their ecosystems. And businesses themselves touch a variety of stakeholders in the work that they do. And I truly believe they have a responsibility to these stakeholders, whether that's the environment, their communities, and their employees, to really ensure that everyone is thriving. And so we see this belief and responsibility within the B Corp companies in Canada and globally today. They're really committed to kind of using their business as this force for good. And through their activities that we're seeing, they're demonstrating their commitments to really the social and environmental sustainability. And what's remarkable, and I always think this is interesting, that we're seeing companies of all sizes. Really 75% of the Canadian community is actually made up of really small and medium-sized businesses. And so, and then they have this higher commitment to purpose, really beyond profit. And what's incredible is they're using their skills to really rethink systems. And so whether this is a small consulting firm out of, all the way on the other side of the country, out of Newfoundland, Aurelia, that is focused on capacity development, and they're really using their skills to work with Indigenous communities to really take back the childcare systems. And I see Teresa on the call today, but a local BC company, Reid's Automotive Recycling, is doing incredible things, and they're really commitment to sustainability within the automotive industry. And so these companies are really finding areas that they believe they can affect real change and really creating a movement on some of the biggest issues that we're facing today.
Thank you, Michelle. I think it's really interesting. I heard some great key words in there. I'm hearing resilience. I hear measurable change, and I hear, business not sitting on top of society, but very much as a part of and ensuring that that key stakeholder relationship is balanced, so it doesn't become this kind of, take and linear business model. So, you've all done and are at different stages of work in the social purpose field. I'd really love to hear from you, a little bit about your roadmap, and then about some of the barriers and some of the challenges you may have had on your purpose journey. And, what are the things that you do to overcome them? What keeps you moving on this path forward? And Michelle, we'll start with you.
For sure. I think when we're looking at some of the barriers, and I'll kind of take it from more like a broader kind of B Corp kind of perspective, and even having gone through the purpose program in another lifetime, purpose really requires resiliency. And I say that in fact because by doing this measurement, you may have an idea of really who you are as a company. And when you actually do the measurements and all the steps that you do to kind of really finding your purpose, you may find out that that actually isn't really how others see you, and that really isn't who you are. And so sometimes, even as a person, we all want to be perceived a certain way. Folks can find that really challenging. So I think it's really important to kind of really stick with that. I think too, the other thing is there's so many choices. Unfortunately, there's so many problems in the world today. So there's so many things that you can be involved in an organization. And sometimes that can be really overwhelming. And I think even within the B Corp movement, we see that folks really want to be involved in a lot of different areas. So it's really for that, companies just really kind of looking and seeing what is your primary area? Where do you think you can have the most sphere of influence? And I think, taking a quote from another presentation that I was in, what's within your hug zone? And that really resonated with that. What can you really do that's really within your reach as a company? And I think probably the last thing I would say is that measurement piece. Sometimes that's a barrier. You can see within the B Corp community, companies that really have that really kind of excel, but they don't really know how to integrate purpose throughout their whole organization. And I think that can be sometimes a challenge. Luckily, some ways that you can overcome that, with us, we have the B Impact Assessment. And so that's something that is available to all entrepreneurs to use really as that guideline. And within that assessment is those impact business models, which I really delineate as the purpose section of the B Impact Assessment. So there are some guides and tools that can kind of help you along your way as you're trying to really discern all the choices and be resilient in making your purpose statements. So
I love what's within your reach of a hug. I think that's such a great visual, because I think it really indicates the doability if you can break it down in that kind of measurable step. So thank you for that, Michelle. And Liz, how about you?
Okay, so we are still very much at the start of our purpose journey. We'll be completing the second part of the program. Is it this week, I think? So then we move into implementation. I think for us, because we're in this industrial space and there's a lot of questions out there about how responsible energy and some of our industrial processes are for planet and for people as well. The challenge in the innovators program was really balancing the needs of stakeholders. Because we cover all of Canada as well, each province point of view needs to be included. And we also were really committed to being authentic. And so that meant the purpose had to fit with our company and what we do. Our hug zone is industrial. So I do love that as well.
I love that.
So what we had to do was really respect where our customers are at in their journey, and they are investing in transition, and we're here to support them. Likewise, we can model good practice to our suppliers and have impact on both sides of our business, the customer side and the supply side. So at the end of the day, we exist to transform infrastructure for a healthy, thriving planet is a message to all of our stakeholders that we need to prosper on a healthy planet, right? So people need to prosper, but we need the planet in order to do that. And we're starting to measure our own social and environmental performance. And what I thought was going to be a barrier was the climate piece. But in fact, there are great programs out there to help companies kind of get a grasp of their emissions. So we're using Climate Smart, which I highly recommend. And we signed the Net Zero Challenge. So our initial plan is due very soon. So we're working on that. And then, you know, beyond that, we also want to encourage other companies to start the journey, because our small business can only reach so far, but by encouraging family businesses that are in every province and every sector in our economy to get more purposeful in how they approach sustainability, we're hoping that we can have a broader impact than we could on our own.
Great, thank you, Liz. And Nicole?
Yeah, I think so. Chandos, I've been with Chandos for 4 years, and a fantastic company. And I think that our purpose journey started with our employee ownership model. So we've been employee owned since day one, but this is just so integral into who we are as an organization that it really, really started with that, and this idea of you know, we can do more, we can create more wealth for all of our employees and really expand our ownership. And that is something that changed in 2005, around 2005, when we went broad-based with our ownership. And really, there was a ton of effort that went into that. And our CEO at the time, Tom Reddle, used Mondragon, which is the largest employee co-op in Spain, as a model. And that, I think, just started to get him thinking about change and what else we could be doing. And so shortly after that, about, you know, maybe 5 to 10 years later, he really championed B Corp. And that was a big step change for us as an organization. We became B Corp certified in 2016. And that really then started to solidify and get us much more closer to sort of social purpose and social impact at a broad scale. So I just wanted to kind of share a little bit of that. And so I feel like we are pretty far along the journey, because we've been doing a ton of work since 2016, working from the top down, bottom up. We have a great culture in the company of continuous improvement. And I think that's been really key to us and our purpose over the last 5, 6, 7 years, is really just taking that continuous improvement mindset and staying in that hug zone, and then really sort of tackling things as they come up, and not being afraid to take some risks and to fail, and if you make a misstep, to kind of go back. And so there was a lot of trial and error, I think, for us. But now, where we sit today, we're in our third recertification cycle for B Corp. Really have the strong purpose that is well connected to our strategy, and we've done a ton of work building that out. I think the hurdle we're facing is getting to that next level of embeddedness. So really taking it further, like how are we truly using a purpose as a decision lens? And Tessa, I think in one of our early conversations, maybe a year and a half ago, we talked about that decision matrix and getting to that level of sophistication where we're really embedding tools, we're embedding our purpose in our tools, our processes, our procedures, and deeply integrating it into the organization. And I feel like that's just where some of the challenges we're facing today are around that. And also we're growing so fast. And so one of the things you have to be careful of, I think, is your social purpose is deeply connected to your culture as an organization. And when you're onboarding a lot of new people, really making sure that there are strong engagement and communication initiatives to ensure employees understand the purpose, know what it means for them in their role, that the values of the company and the behaviors we look for in our people are really well reflected in our recruiting policies. And that's just something as well that we've been working hard on. Our HR leaders really been working hard on that as we've been growing quite quickly here. So those are just some of the things that we're sort of looking at now.
Yeah, I mean, I think definitely, I think social purpose is it is a marathon, it's not a sprint. And I think that, and it's an ongoing iterative process where you have to build an organization where if your CEO leaves, who is that purpose-driven sort of visionary leader, you still have the bones and the culture to be able to continue that, to continue that social purpose journey. And I think that is, that is part of the nuts and bolts of really operationalizing your social purpose through, as you were saying, Nicole, making sure that you've got all those processes in place, educational tools. That purpose is front and foremost, I think, within an organization, particularly as it grows, right? So that definitely, I think, is I think it's tricky, but I think it is part of that operationalizing it within that organization. So yeah, and I think in terms of, so those are some of the challenges. And what would you say are sort of the benefits? Like, what do you see as, why you're doing this work? We know it's not always easy. Business is busy in the day-to-day of trying to make money, run a business, trying to do a good job, make sure that everyone makes their paychecks. It's a very, I think, challenging time for a lot of businesses with inflation, energy costs, and that kind of thing. What keeps you going? And then, the benefits. What do you see as the real, core benefits that give you that stick-to-itness and determination to continue that pivot and embedding social purpose? And so, Nicole, we'll just start with you this time.
Yeah, and this is really key, isn't it? I mean, this is where the rubber hits the road. And I mean, purpose should be directly tied to performance. The two go hand in hand. It's proven that companies with a strong purpose are outperforming their competitors. And some of the benefits that we've seen, which I think would be common among all companies that kind of take on a social purpose strategy and a vision, are really connected to value for the business in terms of brand and customers, as well as employees, right? So profitability is really bolstered by the strength of a brand. I mean, we know that very hard to come up with an ROI for what your brand stands for, but we do know that there is a connection between incremental profits and really bolstering and creating a moat for yourself as an organization when your brand is very strong. And from our point of view, we see social purpose, corporate purpose as deeply embedded to our brand, and the two really do go hand in hand. So that's helped driving recognition and engagement with our audience around our brand, our customers, our partners, our employees. We also see that it can help us retain customers and create stickiness, more stickiness with our customer base because of this really strong connection. Values-driven leadership, values-driven organizations tend to sort of attract each other. And, our purpose is one that has allowed us to connect with a lot of partners and customers that think similar to us. And that has really allowed us to, increase that customer retention. It's opened up doors for us to meet new customers and new partners. And then the employee piece, I think, is so key when I think about benefits, really creating a highly engaged employee base. I mean, as younger generations come into the workforce, it's well known that they are seeking leaders and companies and businesses that are looking at the world differently, that are putting the priority on not just profits, but as well making society, improving the situation we're in with the environment and nature. And so that's really helping us to attract talent. Overall, all of these things help increase efficiency, increase productivity, and reduce resource churn. And so those are, I think, just really high level, some really important things to think about that connect all through the business. I also just want to talk a little bit specifically at Chandos. Like, we see direct ties to revenue, and I have some examples, and I think it's important to share these stories because while it might be hard to track some of these metrics, when we do see them, we want to share them because we do want people to know that it is paying off and directly in terms of sales and revenue. And so what we've seen is that because we have such a clearly articulated purpose, and we're very, very clear on the actions that we're going to take over the next 3 years to advance our purpose, and we have measured results to show how we are doing that, we've really been able to differentiate ourselves in response to some RFPs that have been asking about things related to our purpose. And because of that, we're winning projects without being the lowest bid. And, I don't want to get into the mechanics of our delivery models, but oftentimes the lowest bid has a high score in construction. And what we found is because we're scoring so high on the purpose section and on the social and environmental outcome section, that we've won at least 3 jobs that where we weren't the lowest bid, which is huge. So for anyone who lives in this world of RFPs, you understand that's quite an accomplishment in terms of how those RFPs are scored. So we're really proud of that. And it also signals to us that the market is ready, like the market is asking for it. And I think that's another benefit. And so, yes, I will. Sorry, that was a long answer, but there was a lot I wanted to get in there.
There are lots of great points in there. And I just want to point it out. You're talking about the decision lens throughout the organization, tied to purpose KPIs, right? Making sure that there's that deliverable and it's linked to performance, to strategy, and really linking your purpose to your brand. And that becomes a driver. It attracts business and it attracts employees. That maybe sums it up in a way. So Michelle, and how about from your perspective, what are you seeing? What do you think are the benefits and the drivers for businesses?
Yeah, well, Nicole definitely touched on a lot of them, but I would say Just in terms of decision, let's face it, decision making is never easy in an organization, but I do think purpose makes that a lot clearer for companies. And so I feel like companies that do have a very clear purpose really understand and can really discern what's in and out of scope really quite quickly. And I think that leads to, you know, kind of a bit more of an ease in kind of making some of those big decisions. I think what we see within B Corps are, you know, some of the decisions they make are what are the customers that they want to work with? What are the organizations they want to work with? How does that actually align to their actual values and what they're hoping to kind of achieve? And so I think too, I know Nicole touched on the employee and customer piece, but that's a piece that's really important. You know, those are two of the biggest kind of stakeholders for most businesses. And I think with that, you know, employees really want to work for companies that are values aligned. There's no secret to that. Employees are changing jobs. It's a very competitive job market. I think that's something that we see, and even within the B Corp community, companies that you can really just, you know, discern, you know, everyone that's a B Corp is kind of making a commitment to this social and environmental responsibility. But those that are really committed to purpose, you can definitely see that in their scores because they really are accessing those impact business models. And you know, Coast Capital has outlined all the great things that they're doing, but we also have another folks in this space, the Assiniboine Credit Union, which actually is the highest scoring B Corp in Canada. And one of the reasons why they are is because that purpose is really interlinked in everything they do. And so what they want to create is really this resilience within all the various stakeholders in their community. And with a huge Indigenous population in Manitoba, really kind of looking at how can you grant kind of access to services to really groups of people that traditionally don't have these. And then also within their organization, how can they actually, you know, push forward reconciliation, but actually having, you know, Indigenous leaders within their community actually really leading at the forefront. And I think all of those pieces combined in that messaging, I think consumers are pretty smart and savvy nowadays, and they don't always believe in what brands are saying. So that's really that brand trust, that when you have that purpose, you see that integration, you see it kind of go through all your products, services, and communication. That kind of really builds that. And I think, you know, that you can't put a dollar value on that because it's definitely something that takes a lot of time and definitely a lot of commitment within that. So, you know, those are just some points that I would say.
So I'm just curious, you know, I can't believe how fast this conversation has gone. I feel like we could be here a lot longer talking about this. But, you know, what, you know, from your perspective, Michelle, if you had to really give, you know, a single piece of advice to anyone who is on this call today, someone who is, you know, in this landscape of there's a lot of things that businesses know that they could be doing, should be doing, thinking of doing, you know, what would be sort of one piece of advice that you would give them to move forward or adopt or implement and champion social purpose within their organizations?
You know, the biggest thing, you know, in a previous organization where I went through the social purpose journey, I would say the biggest aha moment I ever had was that stakeholder engagement.
Yeah.
So really ask those stakeholders around you, whether it's your employees, whether it's community members, folks, you know, outside the organization that you have relationships with. You'll be really surprised. And sorry, there's someone doing construction, of course, now, but you'll be really surprised in what they have to say, and also enlightened in things that you really think that you're doing you're not communicating very well. So again, you can kind of find those gaps, but I would say that's the first thing that I would really start. Ask people what they think, and then also kind of ask them what they also need. And I think that those two things really go hand in hand with one another.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. We talk a lot about stakeholder engagement in social purpose, and you know, I think sometimes we think about it as starting the great conversation. As Nicole mentioned earlier, this is about, you know, businesses are driven by people, and people are all a part of this planet and all the services that that it gives to us to help us thrive, right? And so really understanding, I think, those stakeholders and those stakeholder needs is really the start of that conversation that will, just as a purpose organization, continue on as you move forward. And Nicole, how about you, from your perspective? What would be, if you had some advice to give for a small, medium, or even large organization, what would it be? What would be sort of an actionable step?
So my advice actually, I think, builds on Michelle's. So once you've done that stakeholder engagement, it's so important to root yourself in authenticity. Right? It's very important that your purpose is deeply connected to who you are as a company, what you do, what you stand for, what your brand is. Otherwise, it's very difficult for employees, customers, or partners to kind of connect the two, right?
Yeah.
So that hug zone that Michelle talked about earlier, like stay in that hug zone, right? That's so important. And then from there, I think sometimes it can be tricky, but it's really important to push to get that purpose embedded into the strategy of the organization, right? So get it to that next level, connect it to the corporate strategy, because that's often where 1, 2, 3 year plans are being executed. And it's really important to align the purpose with those key deliverables and those performance indicators that are being driven through the strategic plan of the organization. So just really thinking about how you can connect those.
Yeah, and I think sometimes we talk about, having a stranded purpose, right? What you don't want is to have a purpose that has nowhere to go. And in order for, I think, you to be able to really authentically pivot your organization, it really has to be embedded at that top level, and then integrated with your strategy. So I appreciate those comments. And Liz, from your perspective, as a business that really just leapt into this space and is doing such an incredible job, what would be your advice?
So I think it's important for businesses to start reflecting on this now, but to know that they need to be patient with the process, because like you said, it's a marathon, not a sprint. And it requires a lot of deep thinking and consultation, and you can't rush that. The other piece of advice I have is go broad when you do your stakeholder engagement. So we talk to competitors, we talk to everybody we could talk to get as much feedback as possible to improve the quality of our development of purpose. And it helped to have that breadth of perspective. And while you're doing that, you're also building a network, maybe not so much the competitors, but the other people you speak to along the way, who can become a network of purpose practitioners. It's very valuable to have that network to go to, because it's a long journey. And there are many iterations as you try to embed purpose deeper and deeper into your company. I was surprised to hear from Nicole that after like Chandos has been purpose driven and a B Corp for a long time, and they're still embedding. So just keep that in mind.
That's great. Thank you. So we have a question that's coming from some participants. And I'll just open this up to anyone. How do you avoid purpose washing? Anyone want to take that?
I mean, I'll just start. I think it goes back to that authenticity. And that's key, is that if you are deeply connected to the, what the company does and what the company stands for, I think that's the first step. And I think it's really important to set measurable goals, because when you have a measurable, when you have a metric, when you have a target, and you set that accountability structure up, it allows people inside the company and people outside the company to sort of see and understand, and can help prevent maybe the edges from blurring a little bit. And I think you know, we're going to launch a dashboard here in the next 3 months where we're actually going to share transparently some of our metrics to signal and help others really understand where we're going. And some of it's not all good. We're behind on a couple of our targets, and that's okay. And it's okay to talk about that. So I think those can help. It's just a tough question, I think. Because I do think, though, that purpose-driven companies tend to, when it is embedded and meaningful, there tends to be less risk of purpose washing when there's that authentic leadership and that authentic purpose coming from within the organization. And maybe Liz and Michelle might be able to build on that or provide some further insight.
Yeah, go ahead, Liz.
I decided, and my team decided during the implementers program that we would release our purpose statement, but we wouldn't build it into our external communications until we had some performance to show, and a real story to tell. Like Nicole said, some of our metrics are not going to be great because we're at the beginning of the journey. And maybe that's an opportunity because we've got more to improve. But I think the authenticity for us is we're not going to start promoting ourselves as purpose driven until we can prove that we're walking the talk.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. I think having some key measures and proof points, I think, is really, really important. And Michelle, do you have anything further to add to that? And then we have a question actually from Jim that we'll take after.
For sure. I would say also just to build on what Nicole and Liz are saying is transparency, right? And so being very transparent with your stakeholders. And so I never, I always encourage companies to take their stakeholders on that journey, right? It's not going to be perfect. If we wait for perfect, it will never happen. But it's important to kind of have those measurements, have those goals in there, but also just to communicate that and communicate that honestly. People will not care that you don't meet XY target. They just care that you're working towards that. So just kind of keeping that in mind, and that really kind of helps you set yourself apart from people that are kind of just purpose washing and it's just a marketing idea. Because there will be that authenticity and that storytelling component. And I think it's just such an important piece that sometimes we as Canadians, and I'm generalizing, we don't like to communicate until it really is at a stage that we're like, okay, now we're comfortable with this. But I think it's important just to communicate at any stage.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a really good point that everyone is making, is that you know, to start the journey, you have to acknowledge that you're starting and that there's that beginning, and sometimes it can be messy and there might be things that you didn't get done that you thought you could have got done. There were gaps and so forth. But I think the important thing is to be transparent, to measure, and to be honest about what that really looks like. I just want to take a moment. I think, Jim, you have a question. Did you want to go ahead? And I think we may have lost Jim. Here's a question from Hamish. How do you structure integrating purpose and marketing and communications? And what channels are you using to communicate your purpose? Anyone want to take that? Maybe Nicole.
Sure. I think that what's interesting is if you've all seen the Purpose House that Tessa and the SPI Institute use as a part of their programming, it's very, very similar to the brand framework, a common brand framework. And most brand frameworks would start with the why of the organization and the purpose, and then go to vision, mission, values. Like that's when we think about brand. And so the way that I sort of think about purpose and marketing and communications is, you know, when you think about your purpose house and your brand house, your brand marketing and your brand storytelling can really be where you live that purpose. At the same time, though, I think it's really key to have those proof points, right? And those smaller storytelling opportunities, and those examples and community-driven examples. And so I think part of what we need to do, and what my team does in our marketing and communication, is to look for and amplify the stories that are happening in our networks as well. And not just talking about what we're doing, but talking about what is happening within our supply chain, and celebrating the success of others and the success of project teams and the leadership that owners are taking when they're building a building that has, purpose built into it, or is great for the environment and society. And so I think it's such an opportunity to really look more holistically and apply that same thinking, about business being subservient to society and the environment, and how do you bring that thinking in right through to your marketing and communications. And then the other thing is amplifying the voices of employees, I think, is really key here. Employees can be real strong champions for the purpose and the brand.
Thanks, Nicole. Have another question. Oh, hang on, just want to double check this. Can any business adopt a social purpose? Michelle, over to you.
I'm an optimist. Of course. I am just like, I think that any organization has the ability to change. And I do think as more and more folks are kind of moving to retirement, and new generations are kind of taking over, I think we'll see the evolution of some of those companies. In the B Corp community, we have controversial industries that can't certify, but that doesn't mean that they aren't moving towards that, or aren't trying, or doing, good practices. So not all oil companies are bad, or not, because I think there are, within those systems, there are folks that do really want that change and can adopt that. Is it more challenging? For sure. But I do think that everyone has the potential to really kind of consider, regardless of what they're in, all stakeholders, or at least a particular stakeholder, and kind of, move from there. But yeah, that's my optimism for sure.
Any other comments to that before we wrap? I agree. I mean, I think everyone's within that hug zone, right? I think, and the one thing that I really have noticed, I think, in this social purpose ecosystem is the generosity of the leadership in this space. I think Nicole was talking about marketing. It's like amplifying the stories of others in this space. I think it's really important that we hear these stories, because many of the leaders, I think, in this call today, and others that we've seen, are really energized to transform not just their organizations, but their sectors. And I always imagine, what a world we can live in if we're all pulling, in that direction. And I think that's a really, really inspirational place to be. So I want to thank Liz, Nicole, and Michelle for joining us today, and for really all of the inspirational work that they're doing to use business as a force for good and to create a better world. I'd like to thank Coast Capital for their support. And finally, I'd like to thank everyone here for your interest in social purpose. We regularly host webinars and events. We have an in-person event coming up soon, so look for details coming up on that. If you're interested in learning more about the United Way Social Purpose Institute and its programs, please don't hesitate to reach out to me. I'm always happy to talk about social purpose. Please stay connected by signing up to our newsletter. Join us on LinkedIn. I think you have everyone's LinkedIn contact details. I just want to thank all of you so much for joining today. So thank you, everybody.